we're talking about Mississippi and gay rights. Why? Well, because the likes of Bryan Adams and Bruce Springsteen are among those who've cancelled shows in Mississippi to protest at new laws to limit the rights of gay people. The argument of the Mississippi lawmakers is that people have a religious right, a religious freedom right, to not employ or give service to or rent out rooms to and the like to gay people because it's against their religious beliefs. But when do religious beliefs trump the rights of people just to, well, be who they are? If you are born gay, and most evidence seems to be now that, people are born gay in the same way they're born straight or born white or born black. And yet, why should someone be discriminated against simply because of their sexuality? I say people like Bryan Adams and Bruce Springsteen standing up against that. Many Mississippi writers, including the best-selling author John Grisham, calling for a repeal of the law before it takes effect in July. Other big companies saying they're refusing to do business in Mississippi because they believe the law is discriminatory. But have the religious people got a right to discriminate? Let's talk to Simon Calvert. He's Deputy Director for Public Affairs at the Christian Institute back here in Britain. Simon, I must stress you have no say over what happens in the law in Mississippi, so I'm not making you responsible for anything there. But do you think there is a case for this law?
Yes, I mean, I've been listening to the discussion so far, and if I may say, I think there are a lot of misconceptions, and I hardly know where to start. But you've been kind enough to invite me on, so I'll do my best. I mean, the first is that, of course, the Christian position is not to say we won't have any gay people in our church or in our home, and it's kind of been implied in the discussion that that Christians kind of come close to that point of view. That's not at all the view. And
no,
for people listening, well, I really don't know those people, and I would say this on behalf of all the Christians and all the churches I know. If people are out there listening, or whether they're gay or straight, come and visit us in our churches. You'd be welcome. So let's just make that clear.
Okay.
The second point is you've talked as if there's a big difference between UK law and Mississippi law, but actually UK discrimination law has exceptions and exemptions to protect religious freedom. So, for example, nobody thinks, I hope, that a church minister should be forced to perform same-sex weddings, because they understand that marriage is something about which Christians have a very high view, and they have all sorts of beliefs about when they will and will not help to solemnize a marriage. And it's quite right that churches should be free to set their own rules about that.
I believe the Church of England is actually legally barred from doing so. That was one of the conditions of having the law for equal marriage in civil services, was it not?
They sought an exemption.
So it's not only they don't have to, they are legally barred from doing so.
And churches of all types and religious organisations of all types have a protection written into law so that they cannot be sued for declining to solemnise a same-sex wedding. And that seems perfectly sensible, doesn't it? So there are exceptions. There are also exceptions for employment. So again, envisage the situation of a church minister, and the church minister goes off the rails. Now, if he is a single man, and he begins a sexual relationship with a woman, the church, assuming the church takes a sort of an Orthodox Christian view, would be entitled to say, we're sorry, you can no longer be our minister. And he could never sue them over that.
Because you're not complying with the tenets of our religion, yes.
Yes, and similarly, if the minister was married and he left his wife for another woman, the church could remove him from his office and say, well, sorry, you can no longer be our minister. And similarly, if the minister left his
Prince
wife
Charles is going to be the head of the Church of England, and he's divorced.
Well, and let me just finish making the point that if the man left his wife for another man, again, the church would be entitled to say, you cannot be our minister. Now, as a matter of fact, in the basic law would say that the man could sue in that situation. However, there are exemptions written into equality law.
I accept that. I absolutely accept that. However, there is a trade-off, isn't there? When does the view of some people, some Christians, and it is a largely Christian view in America, in the sort of the southern states, that this is this view on homosexuality, when does that trump the rights of people who are gay to go about their normal, what they would regard, lawful business?
Well, as you sort of implied, neither of us knows the details of the law in Mississippi, but when I read about it, what its defenders say is that it's essentially seeking to do the same things that I've just been talking about. So churches not being compelled to solemnise same-sex weddings and that kind of thing. So we're not talking about a right for people to say, you're gay, I don't like you. You're not coming into my business or my home.
This law. I'm sorry, I do know enough about this law. This law permits employers to say, because if they have religious views, which view that they don't have to employ homosexuality, they can determine workplace policies on various aspects of people being gay. Now that's just unacceptable.
Well, I've already said that there are exemptions in the law in the UK.
But they are a very small number of exceptions in exceptional circumstances regarding the church, and you probably only got those.
Well, hang about. It works both ways. I mean,
Yeah.
Gay organisations are free, for example, to, as some of them do, to say we will only employ gay people to provide the services that we provide to gay people. So they're allowed to discriminate on the grounds of sexual orientation. And again, that seems a perfectly sensible exemption. So we mustn't get this idea that discrimination law
Yes.
is absolute and that nothing can ever be exempted or protected from it.
Okay,
I mean,
no, I
sport
do-
is another exemption when it comes to transgenderism.
Yes, no, I'll accept those things, but nevertheless, enough people are upset about this change in the law that's proposed. Well, it's going to go through in July in Mississippi, and changes in the law in North Carolina as well. But there has been the issue. Obviously, we had the issue over equal marriage here in Britain, and other issues. And there does come a point when in a liberal state where one tries to sort of say, look, live and let live, and let's all be tolerant, and I'll tolerate your views on gay people or Christians or whatever. You tolerate my views. But there does come a point when those two views do clash. One is going to have to give. Which one should it be?
Well, as you say, in a liberal state, you have to have a live and let live kind of policy. I think you talked earlier on, or somebody talked earlier on, about people's freedom to be who they are. And people know that Christians have certain views. So take the Ashes Baking Company case in Belfast, in Northern Ireland. That's a case that kind of encapsulates what's wrong with current discrimination law in the UK, because there you have a family business who, and I know you don't agree with us on this, but I use the example, they have been sued and ordered by the courts to pay compensation because they wouldn't produce a campaign cake saying support gay marriage. Mm-hmm. Now, people like Peter Tatchell say, I don't agree with their point of view, but I don't think they should be compelled to help promote my point of view.
Yeah.
That's where the clash arises. It's those issues where conscience is at stake. People are being asked to do things which go against their consciences and would involve them in moral compromise in their view. And whoever you are, you ought to be entitled to your views, and you ought to be entitled to live those views without being sued.
Yeah, no, it is a difficult one. And again, when we have these freedoms, and they will clash. And I suppose as long as we can all debate them and talk about them in a civilised fashion and treat each other with respect, then that's what matters.
Well,
really
amen to
appreciate you
that.
joining us. Simon Calvert from the Christian Institute there.